Okay, late night edition of Collect All and Wave. Let's jump into it. I found something kind of weird that I think would be useful to know if you use any brainworx plugins, specifically the channel strip plugins, or even other ones that might do a similar thing, or even something like the Fab Filter Pro Q3. Check it out. Here's what we have. This is a drum break that's going through the utility plugin that makes it into mono. Okay, cool. So next, I noticed as I was starting to work on this that when I turn on certain plugins, let me just get this rack going. Oops, let's set this up. Yeah, when I turn on certain plugins, like I turned on this SSL plugin, and I sometimes will scroll around between random channels just to see if they sound any different. Look what it's doing. I noticed it making things wider in a hearable way, and I'm saying, what could possibly be doing this? I mean, no dynamics engaged, no EQ happening, and then furthermore, why is it different between these channels? Like if I go to a different pair of channels, it changes. Now something kind of different's happening. Now if I go here, it's back to being pretty honest, pretty mono, what I would expect, right? So I played around a little bit, and what I found was it's the filters. Check this out. If I turn the filters, actually let me find a channel that's where it's like really noticeable. I think if I go back a couple, yeah, like this is a pretty spicy pair. If I turn the filters off, it goes away. If I turn them back on, even though they're all the way open, I'm still seeing some kind of difference happening here. And what I would suspect, my hypothesis here, is this TMT technology that they use. It's modeling the differences between channels as if you were on an analog desk. And in that situation, you would have a slight difference, sometimes, depending on the tolerances of the components, right? You have slight differences on this channel's filter versus this channel's filter. So even though this is set at 16 hertz, this one is a little off from this one. And the more of a difference there is, the more of this you're going to see because of the phase differences between the channels. And like I said, you can hear this. Let me just stop talking for a second. Here it is without. This is with nothing. And here it is with. Without. With. So, just to confirm that that's what I thought was happening, I did a couple things. The biggest one is I opened up Pro Q3, right? Let me just get rid of this for a second, right? We start flat, it's back to mono, okay? Let's add a filter. Let's even try to set it up similarly, which happens if we go to 16 hertz. All right, so below any of the action. Still nothing. Okay, let's split this. Still nothing. Still the same. Left and right are no difference. If we move one of them, you see how something starts to happen here? So even though both of these filters are below our kick drum, and they're not really filtering out all that much, they have a phase change that affects things higher up here, right? Because again, you could alter it with the filter shape as well. I just did it by accident, but let's say I flatten one out and I make the other one really steep. Look at that. So we get this kind of like weird widening thing that happens. And so I kept experimenting a little bit. And I figured out you can even mess with what band it happens in. All right, so let me just turn off all of this. Here, you're going to hear it more by the kick drum. See how the kicks are all really wide now? Because of the phase differences? this affects more snare drums. Because it's around where that's hitting, I think. I'm not really a math guy. Hopefully somebody can school me a little bit on what the physics of what's actually happening here. But I do know that anytime you introduce equalization, you're going to introduce some kind of phase change, unless you're using linear phase EQ. And the principle here is phase changes that happen somewhere, like here, affect things higher up in the spectrum. Right, same thing here. Right, this is pretty high filtering. Again, not really filtering out that much, I think. I don't think this is filtering out that much. Oh, backblaze. I'll do you later. So even though these filters are high up, they're still causing some change here. And then I said if we turn everything on, we put our low filters back down to like the 16, 17 range down here, we're still seeing stuff happening. So I suspect that's what's happening in these brainworx plugins down here. And just for reference, this is an external effect. This is going through actual analog here. This is patching out to my louder than liftoff silver bullet, which is fantastic. That's worth its own video. But yeah, even hitting an actual piece of gear, this is pretty well matched. There's a little difference, but I can't hear it that well. Right? So where things get interesting though is, number one, all of these channel strip plugins do not behave the same way. That was very interesting to me. So for example, if we stick to this console G plugin, we click around, there's some differences in the channels, but generally they go from being pretty well matched, which this kind of resembles the actual analog gear I was using. On a different one, it's a little wider. Yeah, like a lot of these are pretty well matched. Some of them, like this is getting to be a little bit more of a thing. But then if I, like this was probably the biggest, weirdest one, is this Lindell, what is this, the 80 series? It's based on like some Neve thing. Look at this. You see how it's like tilted to the side? And then the direction is like kind of changing a little bit. It's not perfectly consistent all the time. So I started clicking around in this one. Tilts the other way, back to, see how it's like changing things around? Some tilt slightly left or slightly right, whereas the other channel strip did not do that. And I found that each one of these channel strips had its own kind of vibe. It did its own thing. The other thing that was interesting is you can stack a couple of these together. And now this is really interesting because it's wider, and then there's even this one in particular is adding some like motion to it. Let's add another one. And again, this is not using anything other than filters set to being totally wide open. So, I mean, there's maybe a little bit. Yeah, I hear a little bit of an effect. There's a little bit of gain loss here. Let me see, I could make up some gain here. So this is a hearable thing. And then the other interesting thing you can do, I was playing around with this. Let's just take this console N, paste it, put it here. So this one, I guess, based on a different Neve console. All right, so we'll find a channel that's doing a little bit of this, but not a lot. You can just stack this up and put a bunch of them. Yeah. The computer a second to catch up. It's quieter now. I assume we lost some gain because of phase cancellation. Yeah. Let me go to the last one. Give it a boost. So I don't know. This is kind of an interesting thing. I stumbled upon this by accident. I'm going to try to use it in a musical way. as like kind of even a pseudo widening effect. I would imagine this gets more interesting once you start EQing things, actually adding stuff, something like this. All right, so this can probably be deployed in some interesting ways, even if this isn't the intended use of these things. So I don't know. Let me know what you think about this. If you think this is a totally stupid idea and to never do it again, you could tell me that in the comments. Or if you think this is some badass ninja shit that you've never seen before, that's cool too. But I hadn't seen this discussed anywhere, so I wanted to just get it out into the world that this is a thing that happens with these BX plugins, which I'm a big fan of, by the way. They're fantastic. So beyond that, just let me know what you think. If you think this was cool, you can subscribe. If you want to support what I'm doing and get some free stuff, I have a Patreon where I give away a lot of samples and do some subscriber-only video, that kind of thing. All the links to that are down below. So until next time, peace.